Hi guys, this is Umair. I'm back with another video. In this video, I'll be talking about setting up mean stack application with latest Angular versions like Angular 4 and Angular 5 have been released, and this method is going to work with the later version that are going to be launched in the future as well. So in this video, I'll talk about how to set up Angular app and setting up the MongoDB with it, setting routes with Express, and get the data from our MongoDB and show it using our components and services within Angular. Okay, so I have opened up angular.io websites and the tutorial, and in this page it shows that I need to install Angular CLI globally in my system in order to start it working with Angular. So before moving further, let me open up my CMD, and I have already installed Angular CLI. If you are using Angular CLI for first time, you must install and run this command in your CMD. Make sure you add the -g, that stands for global, and that will be installed globally in all projects. So I've already done it, but you need to run this command in your system. But before that, make sure you install node, and along with the node, npm will automatically be installed. And once you install node with the default settings, you can run any command starting with npm. Okay, so once you install CLI, I need to create an Angular application. Okay, so navigate to specific directory where you want to create your mean stack project. I have already navigated to it, and in order to create my new project, I need to use ng command. Ng space new space and the name of my project. So mean stack is the name of my project. Press enter, and it's going to take some time because it needs to install all the dependency packages and the modules and the required files for running our Angular application. We don't need to create a bunch of files and folders to work with Angular 4. It do it itself. So wait for it. It's gonna take some time. So after a few minutes, it has created my new project with all the dependency files, dependency modules. So I need to close the CMD now, and I have opened Visual Studio Code. You can use any kind of IDE that you want, but I'm using this VS Code, and in this IDE, I'm gonna open that new folder. So I have clicked on open folder, and this is the project that I have just created. I need to click on it and select folder. Now it's going to open up my project that has just been created, and these are the files on the left side that was created by my ng new and the name of project and that command. So it has installed all the node modules required. It has installed the source and the end-to-end E2E testing files. Okay, so in my terminal, before proceeding further, I just need to run my Angular 4 or any Angular 5 project. Make sure you check that out, and make sure there aren't any errors. So in order to run it, you need to use ng serve. The project has been compiled successfully in my localhost colon 4200, and go to my browser and run this. So app works on the mean stack. This is the title, and if this title is being shown in your system, it means that our modules have been installed successfully and our Angular app is working fine. Okay, so that's good. Now we need to integrate Express in our Angular project, but for Express need a dist folder of this project to serve the files. All right, so in order to create the dist folder of this project, we need to use command ng build, and if I click and press enter, it's gonna select the files from my source directory. It's going to create the files in such a format that will be readable by our Express server. So you can see that after running the ng build, it has created a dist folder including all the files of current services, current components. Right now default component is only one, we don't have service. So whenever we are about to create a new component or a service, we need to run ng build command again in order to run our Express server. Okay, so this folder has been created. Now we need to create a file that is going to create our routes, that is going to create the port and run our server on specific port. So let's create a new file, and I'm going to call this name server.js. Okay, so before writing anything inside this file, I need to install two more things. Express require Express module and a body parser. Body parser creates a middleware for the request coming from the server. So usually it contains all the data that is coming within the request.body object. So before writing anything, let's come to the terminal, and inside the terminal I will use npm install express, and I need to use body parser -- save to add these modules in my package.json file, and press enter. It's going to download and install this express and body parser module within my node modules folder, and add the reference of both the modules within my package.json file, so that if I give this project to someone else, he just need to run npm install, and that command is going to install all these things. And this is just to explain you if you haven't already used npm commands and don't know anything about package.json file. So let's wait for it, and it's going to install these two modules. So it has installed these modules and have added the reference to those modules within my package.json file. You can see this is body parser and this is express. Okay, so now let's go to the server.js and now start including the body parser and express and other modules. So I'll use var express require express and var body parser require body parser, and I need to have a path module and HTTP module as well. So HTTP and after requiring express module, I need to call the express function. So I'll use app express, and after that I need to add a bit more configuration to this express. So let's add a router folder. I haven't created any route folder that is going to take all the APIs, but I'll be creating. But before that, let's add that directory inside my server.js file. So I will use var API require, and I'm going to create a folder called server. So server, within the server I'm going to create a folder, not a folder, I'm going to create a file api.js. So I'll just write API. Okay, so after that I need to add the parsers. I included the body parser, installed it, and now I need to set that parser as a middleware. So I will use app.use body parser.json, app.use body parser.url encoded, and it needs an object and that is extended equals to false. Alright, and after that express need that dist folder that I just created using ng build command. So let's add the reference for the dist folder, and to add the reference I need to use the app variable again, and app.use, and it needs express.static path.join _ directory name and the name of directory, and that is dist. Okay, and I need to use the URL for the API file. Okay, whenever I need to run my site on my browser, what needs to be the default URL? So default URL will be the static localhost 3000. So I will use app.use / and it's going to have api.js file. Okay, and if I go to my dist folder, it has index.html. that is only one HTML that is going to be created in my dist folder. Now I need to add the reference of this HTML file. So I'll use app.get static request, and it has a response, and within the response it's going to send file path.join directory name, and that is dist / index.html. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And the final thing that we need to set, as usual, we need to set the port, and we need to run our Express server. Okay, so in order to set the port, let's create a port variable, and process.env.port. if it doesn't exist, then create a port 3000, and app.set port to port. Okay, so port has been set. Now let's run our Express server. So let's create a server variable, and http.create server and app, and finally server.listen port, and let's add a message: server is running. Okay, so that's pretty much it. But right now we are not done with this server. I need to add a connection with the MongoDB, fetch the data from MongoDB, and run our server using that API. So before moving further, let's create that folder, and that is the server, and within that folder let's create the api.js file, because this is the file that we have given the reference of right here. Okay, so now let's install MongoDB. So npm install MongoDB --save. Make sure you installed MongoDB after downloading it in your system. This is just to install within this project, because I'm not using -g. I just want to use the MongoDB within this project. So it's going to add the reference of MongoDB within my package.json file as well, same as I did in case of Express and body parser. So let's wait for it. You can see that it has added the reference of MongoDB and installed MongoDB within node modules folder. Now we need to have a MongoDB installed globally in our system, and I hope that you have already installed MongoDB after downloading it from MongoDB website. So now in order to run MongoDB, first of all, make sure you have created a data directory within the C directory, and within the data you have created DB folder. Okay, because by default MongoDB server look at the data slash DB folder within the C directory. Okay, so now in order to run MongoDB, let's open up CMD and go back to the home C directory, and I'm just going to run MongoD. Okay, so it has picked up that folder C/data/DB, and now it needs to start a connection, and it is waiting for connection to be added. So in order to, we can also run it using CMD, but to have a proper user interface, I have installed RoboMongo. So this is the RoboMongo. You need to, if you want this, you can install it, and you need to create a new connection if you want, and make sure you add the address of that connection, localhost :2017, because this is where our connection needs to be set, because right here waiting for connection on port 27017. Okay, so I will connect it now. If I go to CMD, and it has shown me a message that connection accepted from this IP. Okay, so our MongoDB has been started. All right, and now inside this MongoDB I need to create a database. So in my test connection, let's right click on it and create database, and I'm going to name my database MeanStack. Okay, this database has been created, and within this database we have the collections, and let's create a new collection, and let's say students. Okay, so collection have been created, and within the student collection add one document. Each object within the collection represent one document. So I will just add a student name Umair. Okay, so this has been added, and if I right click and view document, you can see that it has only one document. So our database has been created, collection has been created, and an item within that collection has been created. Okay, so let's go back to our project. We have installed MongoDB and open up api.js file, and within this file we need to add a MongoDB client and add a connection to that particular database that we have just created. Okay, so let's add and require the modules. So first of all, var express require, and we need to have an express, and var we need to have a router. So express dot router, and now we need to have a MongoDB client, and this is why we installed MongoDB in this project. So Mongo client equals to require MongoDB, and we need to call a Mongo client. Okay, so now we need to have an object ID require MongoDB and object ID. Okay, so these are the four modules that we require. Now let's add a connection to that particular database on that URL. So let's add a const variable, and the connection equals to closure return Mongo client dot connect MongoDB /localhost :27017, because this is the URL we are running right here. You can see this is the port. All right, and after that slash and add the name of database. Name of database is mean stack, so I will write mean stack. Okay, so it has a DB. So once it's done, we need to check if there isn't any error. If there is error, then return console.log error, otherwise called closure DB. Okay, so our connection to that database has been created. Okay, so now let's add some validations and the handlers for our application. So let's add the response objects. Whenever we call the database, it needs to have a student's document inside it. So what kind of data that document should return? We need to have a success message. If the data has been returned successfully, we need to have a data itself. We need to have a status, that whether there is a 401 status, whether there is a 200, that is a success status. So first of all, let response equals to object and status 200, message, let's add null, and the data within the array. Okay, so this is the object that has been created. Now let's add the error handler. So var send error equals to error comma response, and response dot status equals to 501, response dot message equals to type of error equals to object. Then I need to return an error message. If not, then I need to return just error object. So error. And finally, we need to set the status. So response dot status 501 JSON and send the response to it. Okay, so error handler has been added. And finally, let's fetch the data from our DB. We have created the connection within this connection variable. So using that variable, we are going to call that DB. Okay, so let's get the students. So but using the router dot get, and we are going to call students, and that is the document. First of all, request and the response, and using that connection variable, that is actually a function. So, and this is the default syntax of getting the data from DB provided by the MongoDB. So you can check that out and search it online. So we have the DB dot collection. What is the name of collection? That is the students dot find dot to array dot then, and the students is, and we just need to create an object. So there was an error because this curly braces was missing. So within this response, I need to use that response object to add the data that has been given within the students variable. So add that student's data within this data. Okay, so response dot data equals to students, and then send the response within the JSON format. Okay, and at the end, let's export this module. Exports equals to the router. Okay, so now let's run ng build command so that we don't get any configuration error. So ng build command needs to run after every change that we made in our JavaScript files. So now that has been done. Now let's run that server.js file using node server.js. So our server is running. And let's go to our browser and let's run localhost colon 3000, because in our server.js file we set the port to 3000. Okay, so let's go to this, and this is the URL that we need to run, and /student is the URL that we created here, and this is the URL within the router, and this is going to return me the data of the document within that DB that we have created the connection of right here. So if I reload it, you can see that it has returned me a status, it has returned me a message, and after that it has returned me a data with an ID of that particular object, and this is the data that we created in our MongoDB. Okay, so now let's integrate all these things with Angular. Okay, we have set up Node, we have set up Express, we have created the connection of Express with the MongoDB. Okay, and the last thing is we need to do is to integrate our Angular code with it. Okay, so that is pretty simple. So this is the folder, source folder, in which our file exists, and within the source folder we have the app folder. Okay, first of all the APIs should be received using a service, because we need to use that user's data at many places. So rather than getting the data and calling this API within the component, it is a good practice to create a service and fetch the data of these students. Okay, so in order to create a service, we need to use ng service and the name of that service. So let's say the data is the name of our service. So it's going to take some time and it's going to install my service. So you can see that it has installed the spec file and the TS file. So this is the service that it has created for us. Okay, so we have all the modules, the core module that contains some functions, but for calling an API we need to use the HTTP module. Okay, so in order to import HTTP from Angular/HTTP, okay, and after that we also need to import rxjs/add/operator/map. Okay, and this is the class of my data service, and this is the constructor. Okay, so let's create a variable. Let's a result, and this is the variable, and that is going to contain the data coming from that DB. Okay, so within the constructor, let's create a variable of that HTTP module. So private underscore HTTP and HTTP. Okay, so within the constructor, let's call a function, and from the component that we will be creating later, we are going to call that function that is going to return us the data of students. So get students is the function, and it's going to return me this dot underscore http dot get. And what is the API? API is slash students dot map result this dot result equals to result dot json dot data. Okay, so this is all the things that we need to write within this service. So in order to use this service within the component, we need to add this service in our app.module.ts file before using. So you can see that within this file we have the app component already added. We need to add the service as well. So import, and the name of our service is, let's copy the name of class data service, and this is from data.service. Okay, and we need to add this within the providers. All right, so this has been added. Let's close this file and open up our app.component.ts file, and this is the title that was earlier coming from app works, and we need to remove this variable. And within this component we need to call this function that is going to return me a data. Okay, so let's import that data service. Let's copy that one from here. Okay, so this has been added. Now within this class, let's create a students array. And we need to add the type of array, and let's add any. Okay, because this array is going to be of an object, not a string or an integers. So now let's add a constructor, and within the constructor private and underscore data service colon data service. So within the constructor, let's use this dot data service dot, it's going to give me all the functions within that service. So we have the get students. Okay, we have called, and it has a callback function called subscribe, and subscribe means that when the data has been fetched within the response variable, and this dot students equals to response, this make it students. Okay, so now the response have been get from that data service using this get students function, as has been stored within the students variable. So open up HTML file, and rather than the title, let's print all the objects, all the students from that document. Okay, so our data is inside this students variable. So inside it I need to use ng for, and if you don't know these syntax like interpolation or these ng directives, I have created a full-fledged series of Angular videos, and that is of about 3.5 hour video. I'll give the link of that video in the description of this video. Make sure to check that out if you want to learn a full-fledged Angular from the start. Okay, so this is the ng for that is going to iterate through all the objects from that document. So ng for let student in students, this is the name of a variable, and it's going to get the data of each object and store it within the student. Okay, so now using the interpolation, I can use student dot name. Alright, So before running it, let me run ng build command again, so that the dist folder may update itself again using the new service that we have just created and the component that we have updated for fetching the data from that DB. Okay, so if I open up this dist, okay, this has been updated. Now let's run node server.js command. Server is running, and let's go and remove the students API and let's run localhost 3000. So let's check the inspect. There is an error. So the error was right here. I wrote in, actually this is off. Okay, so this is the keyword within the ng for directive. Make sure you change that in to off, and after that let's run ng build command again. And now once the build is done, let's run the server. Server is running, and reload it, and you can see that the data has been fetched, and this is the only student exist in our MongoDB. If I open up my RoboMongo, and this is the Mongo. So let's create a new document, insert document, and we have the name as a key, and the next student is John. Okay, so let's save it. Now we have 2 students, so let's reload it, and we have got the 2 students. So our Angular is getting the data from that MongoDB using the Express API, and we have combined all these 4 technologies together, and we can extend this work by creating the new APIs right here. We just created the students API. We can get the post student API. We can get the delete student API. You can check that out using the MongoDB website. We can get the data from the other documents rather than the students. So guys, in this video we have just seen the basic configuration and the settings required for running our mean stack Angular application. And this was just a configuration and a startup video, and I'm going to start a full series of a mean stack application that is going to be 5 to 6 hours series. So make sure to subscribe my channel and stay tuned, and comment below if you have any question. Thanks for watching.